you're going to have a stroke, be sure to finish your PhD first, because here is a list of words I could not spell. Cake, scene, some, read, shoe, friend. These are the words I could not read. Cup, dog, hat, mop. I could not recall my children's names. Just 15 days earlier, I had been a PhD candidate, packing up my kids for a road trip to Northern Ontario to see family, and kissing my husband goodbye. On this day, however, I was in a stroke rehabilitation ward with a gash in my head the size of a carving knife. On one hand, my brain felt split, one side a foggy miasma, and the other alert and in disbelief. But my whole brain couldn't stop thinking about Oscar, my 9-year-old, who, after seeing the wound in my skull, retreated into the fear and anger and confusion that only a child can. Why hadn't anybody covered up my head before my kids came into that room? N is for Nora, O is for Oscar, I is for invisible. If you're going to have a stroke, don't do it on the side of the highway in rural Northern Ontario. That's what I did. I went for a pee in the bush, and then I collapsed on my steering wheel in an empty parking lot during a raging pandemic in front of my kids. The chain of events that saw me go from massive hemorrhagic stroke in one town to prep for surgery in another is far too fragile to convey. But what I can tell you is this: there is no luck in having a stroke. People like to say, yeah, but it could have been worse. Worse how? If only I had died right then and there, that would have been worse, I guess. If you're gonna have a stroke, make sure your impairments are obvious. There's a hierarchy to disability, in case you didn't know. At the very top or bottom, you choose, are those whose disabilities we can not only see, but whose attitudes play into our narrative of recovery and resilience. I've got another word for you: reality. There I was with staples in my head and a helmet on to protect the brain tissue that was oozing out of said helmet, and still it seemed no one could see my reality. My days in that stroke ward were peppered with meaningless tasks that people could check off their lists before going home for the night. These experts could not see me. They could not see the agony of knowing that my son was too terrified to visit me in that condition. We went a whole 9 days without each other, the longest we had ever been apart. They could not possibly imagine that I would find comfort in knowing what actually happened in my broken brain, that I would crave words like alexia, agraphia, aphasia. Naming it is empowering and validating and makes the invisible visible. Instead, they had me read grocery lists because that is how a woman recovers. And they would not think twice about simply stopping my birth control because a stroke is its own contraceptive. I felt like hell to be heard. I self-advocated hard. How's that for resilience? I wasn't invisible. It was right there. But it was the experts in my care who couldn't see me. What if it were you? What would you want the experts in your care to know? If you're going to have a stroke, be prepared to agree that positive thinking is almighty. When I was finally discharged from hospital, proven able to bathe and cook for myself, I was grateful to be back at home in London, Ontario, and that officially meant that I was in recovery. A neuroscientist friend of mine would go for walks with me and she would tell me what actually happened in my broken brain. She said my hemorrhagic stroke is a doozy. It damaged the temporal cortex and the occipital cortex, and now there is a finger-sized gash in my head where healthy brain tissue used to be. You'll recover! The brain is plastic. The only disability in life is a bad attitude. This is what recovery culture has given us. The woefully uninformed right to say, chin up, you'll recover. We live in a culture of triumph over adversity, a culture that insists on recovery. But I desire to be seen as I am, not a sadder, lesser version of who I was. They'll say everything happens for a reason. Have gratitude for your journey.
I say, there is no reason whatsoever that I had a stroke except for a tangle of veins like a bird's nest that let go. And I do have gratitude, but I'm allowed to feel other things too, like annoyance and frustration and exhaustion at the platitudes.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Give me a break. If you're going to have a stroke, don't be a woman. It's a funny thing being both a woman and one with an invisible disability. It just seems to slip people's minds somehow, this stroke of mine. True story. Someone I've known for decades told me recently, quite literally, to wear a sign to remind her that I can't read. Well, I laughed. Yeah, that's what we do, right? Women have the social responsibility to alleviate the uncomfortable moments, the sting of their embarrassments, and to reassure them that they didn't mean anything by it. And my job, says womanhood, well, is to be good. Don't make anyone feel uncomfortable. You can take it. You're resilient. And by the way, I hate the word resilient. It's used to mean you're so strong, but what it really means is keep taking the blows, keep suffering the indignities. We tell kids that they're resilient when they've broken a bone or we've done them some harm. And we do the same with invisible disability when we condescend and we dismiss through our actions and our words.
Anyway, women are accommodating. We all know that. We make space for the harms done to us in order to keep the peace. So to be a woman with an invisible disability is to be doubly denied. Even if they do remember that you can't read because you had a stroke, they still get to say, I didn't mean it that way.
That's okay. I'm resilient. I'm good. If you're going to have a stroke and be a woman, definitely be married to someone who earns an upper middle class wage. You'll need that person to maintain your standard of living and keep you off of the meager crumbs that are disability payments. Even then, make sure that person is unequivocally loyal to you and willing to manage the appointment schedules and do the groceries and maintain the house and the kids and their sports and work full time. You must make sure your spouse can handle all of these things. At least half of post-stroke marriages end in divorce. And if you're going to have a stroke and be a woman, make sure you have a good friend or family member in each of the following categories: a neuroscience professor, a lawyer, a family doctor, disability experts, I had two, social worker, and a journalist. Also, make sure that you are white, because that's what I did. I was very prepared. If you're gonna have a stroke, be prepared to redefine yourself and become an entrepreneur. Would you hire me? My resume is awesome. I'll say it again. I was a PhD candidate. I'm incredibly personable, very hard worker, absolutely trustworthy. Still, I can't make change for your coffee. I can't take a phone number if you want those numbers in the right order. I can't take a credit card number or really get the date and the time right. And I read at a first grade level. So what does this mean? As a woman who is already mired in a capitalist patriarchy that says you just need more willpower to get back to work, having an invisible disability feels like a moral failing. Like if I tried harder, like closed my eyes and squeezed hard, I could grow back the brain tissue that was cut away. I guess I'm just lazy.
I'll tell you this though, I am far from unintelligent. I'm killing it in the post-stroke game. Patterns? Unreal. Recall and retention? Superior. Naming things? Not so much. But no matter what the tests say, I'm definitely smart enough to know that I have more to offer beyond the regular hustle and grind.
In fact, I own a business. Comfort Headbands was my response to my child's fear. If I'd had a long, wide fabric band without pressure-causing elastic, well, then maybe Oscar wouldn't have been so terrified. And maybe other kids won't feel so traumatized by their mother's hair loss during cancer treatments or radiation therapy. Or maybe someone who cries in the dark with migraines might feel a little bit of comfort in my headbands. Or maybe someone will feel really pretty, and that's great. For me, Comfort Headbands is a solution. I can be creative and business-minded. It's also a nod to my research in sustainability. My headbands tackle waste in the garment industry. I use only luxury fabric from Canadian brands started by other entrepreneurial women. What I like the most about my headbands is going to markets and chatting with other women and listening to their stories of invisible trauma and believing them. Mine is not a story of triumph over adversity. I'm not fighting or conquering or going to war with my brain. I did not beat a hemorrhagic stroke. And it's also not a moral failing if I never get back to where I was. That's okay. I am here, and I am whole, and I am good. We did it!